Google, for some reason, they don't allow you to record. Yeah.
वो सर उसमें ना एडवांस वो बिजनेस वाला उसमें सब्सक्रिप्शन लेना था आपको वर्कस्पेस में।
हाँ, तो वो तो करना नहीं है मेरे को।
नहीं, I'm just saying.
हम तो मुफ्त में चलाने वाले बंदे हैं हम सब।
Exactly, agree. So
hey, you guys want to start with a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure.
Let me give you a, whoever, I don't know a lot of you, some of you, we might have interacted, but essentially I am 1985 passed out from BHU. Last century, I graduated from there, electrical engineering from BHU. Then came to work for a year in Bombay, then came to Bangalore, studied at IIM Bangalore. But for the longest period of time, I've been working at startups. Okay. More recently, I've been guiding a number of startups, generally teaching. I mean, basically giving gyan, and at the same time, I also teach at IIM Shillong and IIM Bangalore. Same thing, entrepreneurship and how large enterprises can leverage entrepreneurship. So this is one of the topics that I typically take over there. So it's very easy for me to add this content over here. Okay. Who else wants to introduce themselves? Anup?
That is so amazing, Gursh sir. Actually, I did not know that you are so clear. In a party, I recently met one of my friends, my wife's actually best friend's father, and he came out to be 1985 batch IIT BHU.
Who's this?
Anil Kumar Gupta, I think. He runs a factory of this air pollution measuring devices, something like that.
Anil Gupta.
He's from mining. He was from mining engineering, and then switched to engineering. ऐसा कुछ था.
Mining में मतलब थोड़ा not too much of interaction that used to happen over there. The name would definitely be familiar. My batch, in electrical engineering, there was a guy called Anil Gupta. So I was just wondering if it was the same guy.
Sir, I am 2015 batch graduate, mining engineering. Then actually started programming Pathshala in 2016 because one of my roommate got depressed for not getting a job in Tata Steel. So I did not sit for placements assuming that I'll build something somehow. So
nice.
I did not find value in jobs, but when I saw him, then it was little. So I thought we should build something like that. So we started. So then I went to study tunneling and underground space in between, and then came back to it full time. So we have now trying to venture into some more because EdTech particularly towards software engineering is little saturated now. So we are trying to build some new business verticals around building a software service industry sort of thing or something like that. So it's still exploring on those ideas, but yes, I have one thing which is sustainable. So
nice.
So doing it for 3 years after coming back from India.
Nice. Vikas?
Question, I think we interacted a little bit, but just for everyone's, I think Anup, I interacted with you also briefly over the WhatsApp. And our meeting is due. I've been reaching out to you. But anyway, so I'm a 2002 graduate from Civil, did my master's and MBA from US and been working for 18 years. Last year, I left my job. My last job was with PwC. So I've been in tech advisory only, in a consulting side. अब लास्ट 1 साल से ऑनेस्टली बताऊं तो सर बहुत कुछ ट्राई कर लिया बहुत कुछ छोड़ भी दिया कभी ये कोशिश करते हैं कभी वो कोशिश करता हूँ अभी तो वैसे छोटा सा अपना आईटी सर्विसेज का ही काम कर रहा हूँ जस्ट टू पे द फी ऑफ माय किड्स एंड पुट द ब्रेड ऑन द टेबल बट जस्ट एक्सप्लोरिंग एनीथिंग एंड एवरीथिंग कभी फार्म एरिया में चले जाता हूँ आजकल मैं कार्बन क्रेडिट को लेके कुछ हम लोगों ने मैं शुरू कर रहा हूँ सो बेसिकली जस्ट the recent exploration has been and I think that might be a little more go a little further. So हमारे यहाँ के 1976 and 1975 बैच के सीनियर अपने BHU की थी they were a little big shot in energy area गुड़गांव बेस्ड ही हैं so we have put together a company into the carbon credit segment we 2 months old only so still journey has just started over there but still not sure to be honest with you I'm juggling here and there jumping around not able to figure it out where the click is going to be
हो जाता है don't worry about it.
So
who else Akasmat
hello hi good evening everyone तो बस मैं 2017 ग्रेजुएट हूँ फ्रॉम सेरेमिक इंजीनियरिंग Then I started, like I did some analytics in consulting services company, Tredence, for 2 years.
Okay.
Then after like working on like few of the industry verticals like car tech, consumer retail, I moved to Zomato to work with product team and
Okay.
analytics team. Did a did an impact of like 100 million over 3 years, like in terms of revenue optimization, upselling, cross-selling, PNL, market research.
Nice.
And since last year, I quit my job. I had a fair part-time experience with an NGO. I ventured out an NGO where we upskilled around 200 odd kids to get
Okay.
placements uh, in the industry with an average CTC of 14 LPM.
Oh,
Then like as Anup said कि like वो थोड़ा सा सैचुरेटेड हो गया था एडटेक लास्ट ईयर तक भी एंड वी फिर थोड़ा सा मुश्किल हो रहा था देन वी pivoted our idea from edtech to recruitment tech where for every role we had around 250 plus applicants. So what we are doing right now is we are aggregating demand and serving the underserved market. For example, like there are colleges in Odisha, colleges in Himachal, like IIT Mandi, NIT Rourkela, IIT Bhubaneswar, who are not getting fair share of demand from the industry, like overserved markets like RV College of Engineering from Bangalore. So we are now currently operating in this 0 to 4 years of experience recruitment, some service and some platform play, which like we are still figuring out. But mota we are generating revenues from services and like pumping it in the platform a bit.
Nice. Nice. Who's next? Himanshu?
Yeah, hi everyone. I think I'm fairly very younger than every one of you. I'm a 2021 graduate. So if you guys have heard about Team Avrera, I led that team, Team Avrera from IIT BHU. I led that team in 2018, 19, and 20. And we participated in Singapore and Malaysia and won the competition globally.
Hey, nice.
After that, so during COVID second wave, when there was a huge oxygen crisis, so I basically brought up my Team Avrera team members and collaborated with IIT Kanpur Incubation Center to build oxygen plant. So we built 11 oxygen plant deployed all across India. The order we get directly from Prime Minister's office and Principal Scientific Office. Post that, I worked for in corporate sector for 2 years, Jaguar Land Rover, technical work in different segments, different products. And since last 6 months, I with my team members are trying to build Voltworks, which is majorly focusing on building hardware, power electronic components, and powertrain components for electric vehicles.
Nice. Nice, man. Okay, guys, I see that there are at least 4 or 5 more people, but can we do one thing? Let me start off with this, and then anyone who has a question, you just introduce yourself. Those of you who have not been able to introduce yourself, just start off by quickly introducing yourself, and then after that we can move on. Can I move on to the ESOP thing right now?
I think we should, sir. I think we should. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do that. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, so like I said, I mean, ये 10-12 slide का है. Essentially, the objective here is to cover some 4 or 5 questions in this entire thing, right? First is, what the hell are ESOPs? Many of us may have been given ESOPs before. Many of us may be thinking about giving ESOPs. Essentially, I mean, everyone knows what the full form is: Employee Stock Option Plan. Okay. Remember this, the primary objective is to promote ownership of the business among employees, because a lot of people tend to say that, look, my employees are not feeling as motivated to work in my company. How do I give them ownership of the company? So this is one method by which you give them the equivalent of ownership among employees. Is it the best way to give ownership? Maybe not. We'll discuss. I want your thoughts also on this. But essentially, 4 or 5 questions that I'm trying to cover over here are these. One, should it be given to everyone in the company given the objective? It's to promote the ownership of the business among employees. Okay. Question 1, should it be given to everyone in the company? So question 2, how do we decide how much to offer to each person, whether we are giving it to an individual, whether we're giving it to a bunch of people, whatever. Okay. Typically, what is a vesting period and how much is a typical vesting period? What is this thing all about? What happens if an allotee wishes to encash his ESOP? Allotee is essentially the person to whom you are giving the ESOP to, right? And things like, say, for example, what are the rules behind ESOPs, right? These are the 5 questions that I'm going to cover. There are also a few other questions that people have asked on LinkedIn. So I'm going to try and cover some of those also as we go ahead. Any questions on this? No? Okay, let's go ahead, right? I think the way in which this topic really kicked in was, I think a couple of days ago, someone put up a question that says that, look, should we give ESOPs in our company? Should we give ESOPs in our company? And someone, I think, put out that statement over there that said, bhai, ESOPs does not make sense to give it to everybody in the company. Okay. And therefore I said that, look, I'm involved in the company, which is a 12-year-old company. And I'm helping them design their ESOP pool and helping them design how is it that this should be done. And I said that, look, in my opinion, if you guys want more gyan on this, then I'll go ahead and conduct a small session for you guys. And that's how this topic typically came up. Correct? Are ESOPs for everyone? The answer is an emphatic no. Okay, but it depends upon you as a founder. So for example, there have been cases where, starting from the CEO of the company, forget the founders are the people who have most of the stock in the beginning to start, right? But starting from the CEO of the company all the way down to the, the chaprasi in the company, you can give them ESOPs if you want, provided they are on your rolls. Okay, and this is an important one to remember. There was one question that I got earlier that said that, look, what happens if someone is a consultant or an advisor to the company, but he or she is not on the rolls of the company? Can you give them ESOPs? You can give them stock, but they do not come from the ESOP pool. Okay, that's something which is there to remember. Anyone who can impact the long-term future of the company must get ESOPs. For example, okay, and I've tried to take you to some kind of an example as we go forward, right? Let's assume that you have this person who's building out your product for you, and if he or she leaves the company, it's going to leave the product in a complete doldrum, and your future of the company depends upon that. Then to retain that person, an ESOP is a good way to do this. Okay, but in some cases, bonuses work better than ESOPs, especially for the general folks who are there in the company, who are going to essentially do day-to-day work and who are not involved in the strategic parts as far as the business is concerned. Any questions on this?
No.
No? Okay.
Just a small question. Hi, this is Ankit Mehta, 2010 Ceramics, and I run a IT consulting firm with 50 odd employees. So my question is, specific to the service industry. We don't have a product, we just run on services, but there are few employees who have been with us since last 10 years and do have, a major stake, and we want them to be along with us, in this journey. So is this a good option, ESOPs?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
But when I come to it now, Ankit, when I come to, what is the real value of an ESOP? Okay, towards the end, when I'm saying, look, an ESOP makes sense when someone at the time of parting from the company, he or she gets a significant amount back. Right. That's the only reason why, a person will stick around, saying that, look, I have, say, 10,000 ESOPs in the company. And at this point in time, the value of the company is 0. So I'll get 0. But sometime down the line, if the value of the company becomes, say, 100,000 or something like that, so, I will get, that 10,000 shares, whatever they are worth, I will get that, when I exit the company. Or when the company is able to get an exit in the market. Okay, so when I come to that particular point, which I talked about over here, that says, what happens if an allotee wishes to encash his ESOP? That's a fourth thing. That's the time when I'll answer this question. But yes, if there is anyone that you want to retain in your company for the long term, ESOPs are a good way to do it. sometimes bonuses also work better than ESOPs. Okay, especially at some point in time where a person is saying that, look, lean time chal raha hai, and but you guys have had a bumper year for whatever reason. So sometimes it's better to give out bonuses to employees rather than ESOPs, both from the employee side and from your side as an employer. The reason is this, because ESOP agar ek baar de diya na, it's very difficult to try and get it back. But bonus is a one-time cost. इस बार दिवाली का बोनस दे दिया, पिछले साल दिवाली का बोनस दे दिया, अगले साल दिवाली का बोनस नहीं दिया तभी मतलब चलेगा. But ESOP once given, it's I mean, how do you put it? The impact is for the really long term. So keep that in mind when you are doing this. Okay? Let's go to the next question, right? Which is how much for each person, right? Now, I'm getting into a little bit of technicalities over here. I'm assuming that you guys know what authorized capital in a company is and what paid up or subscribed capital is. Does anyone not know? Everyone knows this?
नहीं सर, नहीं पता, बता दो सर फिर भी quickly.
Okay. So, see, typically in a private limited company, okay, there are two things that you would see on your balance sheet. Okay, one is when you register the company, you will say that, my authorized capital, I want to keep it as say 10 lakhs. I'll just give you some or say 5 lakhs. The minimum authorized capital in any private limited company in India registered through ROC, Registrar of Companies, is 1 lakh. Okay, 100,000 rupees. But the authorized capital can become really, really large. I mean, 1 crore, 2 crore, 10 lakh, 15 lakh, whatever. Okay, depending upon that, the amount of ROC fees that you will have to pay is higher. The reason why sometimes people look at authorized capital to be higher than this 1 lakh, okay, is because if they want to bring in newer shareholders right in the beginning, then it becomes easier. Friends and family round, instead of trying to do a valuation round, if you keep the authorized capital as higher, so you and say, one of your colleagues as a co-founder, you say, I will take 50, the two of us will take 50% of this authorized capital as paid up capital is the thing over there, which is say 5 lakhs. But, I'm going to bring in my, my best friend who's bringing in say 2 lakhs into the company. So you have that authorized capital, just you are now giving him shares. Paid up capital is exactly that, or subscribed capital is exactly that. How much of those shares have been paid for and by whom? Okay, so here, for example, I'm giving you an example, which is, authorized capital. Let's assume that you have set the authorized capital of your company as say 10 lakhs. Okay, and the minimum price of a share in India right now, I mean, this is unfortunate, but the minimum price of a share is rupees 10. You cannot have shares price less than rupees 10 in India. ROC ka matlab, this is one of the rules over here, right? But let's assume that you and your colleague, the two of you get together and say, yaar, matlab, between us, we can put in say up to 50,000 rupees each, either in cash or in terms of effort, or in terms of anything else. I'm bringing in a laptop worth 70,000 rupees. Someone else says I'm bringing another laptop worth 70,000 rupees. All that can go into your balance sheet. The same boss paid up hai. Ye laptop मैंने company को दे दिया, and because of it I'm getting this equivalent number of shares. That is your paid up or subscribed capital. Okay, so look at it like this. So your paid up capital could be say 1 lakh. Your authorized capital could be 10 lakhs, which means only 10% of the company has now been subscribed to or paid up for. Clear? The overhead transmission.
No, it's fine.
Quick question.
Bolo.
Sir, dilution तक ही ये unequal रहेगा ना? Dilution के पहले वाले स्टेज तक, या उसके बाद भी ये unequal हो सकता है?
क्या authorized and
paid up? Authorized and paid up.
It can be beyond that also, but that's a topic for a different discussion. Okay, right now just understand this difference between authorized capital and paid up capital, okay, or subscribed capital. Subscribed and paid up capital are the same. Okay, after dilution, that's a completely different discussion. Usko matlab abhi ke liye chhod do. But for the time being, try and understand this, because an ESOP pool is given on the authorized capital. It is not on the subscribed capital. That's a big difference. Okay, now, so the way you look at it is like this. Let's assume that your authorized capital is say 10 lakhs. Okay, and two of you as co-founders are coming in and saying, yeah, look, I'm bringing in, effort plus a laptop worth 1 lakh. Your other colleague comes in and says, yeah, I'm bringing in effort plus, whatever initial, this one plus some assets into the company worth some another 1 lakh or something like that. So now it becomes 2 lakh as authorized, as subscribed capital. Correct? Which means each of you now has 10% in the company of the authorized capital. Okay. But your ESOP pool is always created from your authorized capital pool. Itna yaad rakho. So for example, here I'm saying this, ESOP pool is 10%. You are creating it at 10,000 rupees, 10,000 shares of rupees 10 each. Okay. So that's what I'm talking. Right now, just absorb this for the time being. Okay. So if needed, I'll explain this a little bit more later. Once fully exercised, which is, you have given out the ESOP pool, tumne bana diya. Once you have made it, then founders, in this example, they hold 10% of the company, employees hold 10% of the company, and the balance 80% is what is called unsubscribed. Okay. Just hold that thought for a second while we go forward. Okay. Now, let's look at something like this. Okay. Here I'm changing it a little bit to say that, look, example company private limited is the name of the company. Okay. You have given, that's the same example that I was talking about before. You now have created an ESOP pool of 10% of the authorized capital, which is say 10,000 shares of rupees 10 as the ESOP pool, and founders hold 10%. Okay. Now here are, say, the following key people in this company. Okay. There's one guy who's a CTO. The other person is an ops director. Third person is a domain expert. Fourth person is the head of sales. Fifth person is the product head. Okay. And I've also given something that says, what is he or she responsible for? The domain expert is responsible for strategy and pre-sales. The head of sales is responsible for sales. Product head is, product build, reports to the CTO, that kind of a thing, right? The next question that you ask yourself is this, which is the next column, which is this person replaceable easily or not? Here, I'm assuming that certain people are replaceable easily and some people are not. It doesn't mean that, you want those people to leave. For example, the ops director, I've generally said, he's replaceable, he or she is replaceable, but I'm not suggesting that he or she should not get ESOPs. I'm saying that you see value that says that, look, this person is valuable to me for the next 5-10 years or something. Therefore, I want to retain this person. But if this person leaves, also I can always replace by somebody else. Okay. So that's the thing that you're talking about over there. Now, the last piece that I'm talking about over here is percentage of company. Okay. How do you typically go about allotting? So which means, see, if you look at this, right, we are saying 10% of the authorized capital, 10% tumne ESOP ke liye laga diya hai. Let's assume that 10% has to be divided across all these people, right? How do you go about doing it? Your thoughts?
Obviously, I will give to the one which is not replaceable and divided by. I will give to the ones which is not replaceable. Okay. And again, based on the priority, again I will rank them. Okay. And you will give. And I will still keep not give everything out to them. So I'm saying 10%. So I have 10,000 share. I don't think so. When I decide at this point of time, I should not give out all 10,000. I should always keep it for the future also, because you never know what's going to happen in the future.
Which is exactly what I'm talking about in the next slide. So it could be something like this, right? So you're saying, just like you said, that I'm not going to give out everything right now, but you're saying, yaar, मतलब ये 5 लोग हैं, इनको मतलब हम 6,000 share दे देते हैं, and 4,000 share I'm still keeping as part of the ESOP pool. These are just suggestions. Okay, I mean, you could do it as 1,000, 250, 1,000, 250, 500, whatever is the kind of thing that you are talking about over here as the number of shares. This is the thing that we are talking about out here, right? But you always retain some amount of the ESOP pool for future rewards, for future people who are coming in. Some of those things are very, 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 very important. Do not exhaust your ESOP pool. In the minute usko create kar diya hai, don't expend all of it, is the point that we are making. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so here, so if authorized capital was equal to paid up capital, and this happens all the time, right? I mean, the authorized capital is 1 lakh, paid up capital is also 1 lakh. There are 2 founders or 2 founders, each hold 50% each, right? That's the way typically it happens. Now, if you want to create an ESOP pool, the founders have to dilute. Correct? The founders have to dilute, which means each founder will say कि हाँ मतलब मैं अपना 5% में दे देता हूँ for the ESOP pool of 10% उसको create करने के लिए. So the founders will now hold 45,000 shares each. 45,000? No, 4,500 shares each. Right? 4,500 shares each. 1,000 shares is meant for the ESOP pool. Clear? So you have diluted your shareholding in this manner.
Yeah.
Which is why sometimes it makes sense to have a higher authorized capital so that founders do not need to dilute. Samjhe?
Rakesh, sir. Sorry, say it again. Can you repeat the last statement, sir?
So the question, the point is this, right? Let's assume that your authorized capital and paid up capital are the same. And if you have to create an ESOP pool, which means founders will have to dilute.
Yep.
But if the authorized capital is higher than paid up capital, founders do not have to dilute. You can just take part of the unsubscribed capital and make that into the ESOP pool.
सर वो अनसब्सक्राइब ही मुझे समझ नहीं आया. वो आपने 10% ही सिर्फ फाउंडर को दिया. फाउंडर ने तो पूरे पैसे लगाए थे पहले 50%.
हाँ, your subscribed capital, let's assume your authorized capital is 10 lakhs.
Yep.
Okay. The subscribers who are the 2 founders who are coming in with say 50,000. जो मतलब जो CA जो बोलता है उसका value क्या है? The founders could then turn around and say, look, you know, ये 40% हम लेके आ रहे हैं और 10%, sorry, 4 लाख हम लेके आ रहे हैं, and you know the ESOP pool 10% बनेगा, which means 10% of the company is unsubscribed. That kind of a thing can also happen. So I'm just playing around with numbers over here just to give you an idea in terms of how this works. But the point over here is this, right? Which is that at any point in time, the founder or the founders through the board of directors, which is basically the 2 founders at any point in time, saying, yeah, you know, we are going to increase our authorized capital, sorry, our paid up capital from 1 lakh to 8 lakhs. Okay. 1 lakh is kept for ESOP. Now, how do I as a founder get an additional number of shares allotted to you? That is, you know, just by the CA or the CS who turns around and says, based upon exceptional performance by the CEO and co-founder of the company, the company board has decided to allot them, you know, whatever, 35% extra or whatever is the kind of thing each. As long as you're small, you can do anything that you want.
Okay.
The point that I wanted to make over here is this, right? Which is try and keep your authorized capital and your paid up capital as slightly different, because see, you do not start off an ESOP pool on day 1. It does not make sense. It's only when you see value that is coming up. See, there is no point in, for example, some of you guys were talking about EdTech, right? And you've got some good guys who have come in over there at this point in time. But EdTech itself is kind of, as you guys pointed out, is a capped out market, and a lot of people are getting confused about, you know, whether you should continue in EdTech or not, right? Those kind of things. Now, at that point in time, if you have additional guys who are holding shares in your company, it becomes that much more complicated. Because if you have to wind down that company, you have to get the permission of every one of the shareholders. That's getting into ROC and you know, those kind of rules. But just to give you an idea, in the beginning, to keep it simple, all I'm saying is create an authorized capital of say 2 lakhs. Start with a subscribed capital of 1 lakh, 2 founders, 50,000, say 50, so which basically means 25%, each one holds. Then at some point in time or the other, you say, now, you know, I have to start retaining some of these guys. You are creating a 20% ESOP pool, no, sorry, a 10% ESOP pool of that 2 lakh authorized capital, which still leaves how much? About 80,000 rupees on the table, right? Of the of the authorized capital. And you say, okay, now the 2 co-founders are being rewarded for their exceptional performance and are getting, you know, that 80,000 rupees of shares, which is say 8,000 shares, as 4,000 plus 4,000 each. As simple as that. Keep it that way. So you don't need to dilute, is the critical thing. ये थोड़ा
सर बट अगर डाइल्यूट भी करना पड़ा तो मतलब ओवरऑल तो ओनरशिप सेम ही रहेगी ना कंपनी में.
हाँ, बट तुम्हारा डाइल्यूशन कम हो जाएगा ना, ज्यादा हो जाएगा ना. दैट्स व्हाई. मैथ करके देखो, डू द मैथ. आई थिंक यू विल बी एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड इट. इसमें I didn't have bring in the spreadsheets into this, but if you see, I'll share another spreadsheet at some point in time which says, how is the ownership of a company actually, how it progresses. I think I had done that sometime back here. याद नहीं आ रहा, I don't remember, but ठीक है. Let's go on, right? Because I think there are more questions that might need to be answered, right? So this is once again the same thing, right? Which says that look, this is the same guy, but now in this case, you're allotting 600 shares out of 1,000 shares. So you're giving them 250, 250, 100, that kind of stuff. And doesn't 200 shares look like very, very small to a guy? There are 10,000 shares. And the reason is this, right? Which is that most of the time, if you tell a guy that you have 10 shares in the company, even if those 10 shares represent, say, a 1% share in the company, the psychology is that yaar ye 10 share hai, itna ye kya hai? So if a person, for example, in this case, if you look at it, this guy who has 200 shares in a 10,000 share company, he now has 2% of the company, which is a significant amount. But the psychology is that this looks really, really small. So there's a way to deal with this. I'll give you an example of how to deal with this. But the point is this, right? It is that if you are working in a startup and if someone says, we are giving you 10 shares in the company, tum thookoge yaar. I mean, most of the time you will say 10 shares, ye kya hai? The US has cracked this by essentially saying that, look, you can have shares which are priced as low as 1 cent. And so they can create, a pool, really large pool of shares. In India, unfortunately, the rule is that you cannot, in a private limited company, you cannot have a share that is priced less than 10 rupees. Otherwise, ideally, you would have a share that is priced at 10 paisa. अब बनाओ उसका मतलब तगड़ा pool बनाओ and say 50,000 shares हम दे रहे हैं, 100,000 shares हम दे रहे हैं, whatever is the kind of thing that you could do that, right? Unfortunately, that is not possible in India. Okay, move on or questions? Yeah, Vikas, you have raised your hand.
No, it was for before. I got the answer previously.
You got the answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the thing is this, right? It is that the other thing that I think every one of you knows that shares will typically vest over a period of time. Vesting essentially means that you don't tell that guy saying कि हाँ मतलब I am giving you 2,000 shares. कल आ जाओ और तुम्हारे लिए मतलब all the 2,000 shares will be ready for you and you can take it in the demat form or in the physical form, right? It's not that. You make sure that the shares vest, which means that the guy is given the option to buy those shares at various points in time so that he can retain that guy for a longer period. And typically what happens is at the time when you are allotting that ESOP, you are telling that guy, saying, champ, the way in which this is going to happen is that you have to buy these shares. Okay. And you could price it at say par value, at face value. Your company might be, generating significant profits or whatever, but you might end up saying that, look, I'm still going ahead and, I'm allotting these shares to you at face value. So your EPS, in some of you who are, used to looking at balance sheets, your earnings per share might be 80, 90 rupees or something like that, which means, your company is making really good money. But you might still turn around and say that, look, for you, because I value you as an employee, I'm going to give you these shares at 10 rupees each, which means you have to buy it. Okay, so there are two periods that you got to remember over here. One is what's called the vesting period, and the other one is what is called a cliff. Cliff is essentially, at the beginning of the cliff is when you tell that guy, okay, that look, I will allot shares to you vesting over 3 years by the end of the first year of your working over here. So let's assume that someone has been working with you for say a year, 2 years, or something like that. You say, hey, you know what? I'm going to give you ESOPs. This is 2023. 2024, I will start giving you ESOPs. This year 2, which I'm talking about over here, is now 2024. First year, I will give you 30 shares. Second year, I will give you 60 shares. Third year, I'll give you 110 shares, so that all of it becomes, a total of 200 shares. Or it could be 0 shares in the first year cliff. You could even, bypass this cliff here completely. In some cases, when people have been working with you for 8 to 10 years, you could say, hey, you know what? I'm going to start by giving you ESOP every quarter. Every 3 months later, I'm going to start giving you shares. And this is the way in which the total number of shares will pan out. So this is mostly based upon discussions between the employee and yourself. And this is another way of doing this. Okay, example, vesting of 200 shares. Any questions on this? Because this is slightly important to try and understand. Because what happens if the guy decides to leave at the end of the first year or before the end of the first year itself? Does he get any shares at all? तुम्हारा झगड़ा हो गया. Let's assume that you had a fight with that guy, or that guy, he ends up doing some rubbish within the company, and you have to let that guy go. You promised him or her ESOPs. Can that guy claim it?
No.
He cannot, provided you have documented it and have got a signature. I'm dealing with a very messy case right now where a guy has promised ESOPs to an employee who's asked to leave. Now that guy is turning around and saying, look, I have an email from you that says I'm going to be allotted so many ESOPs. Give me those shares and I'll leave. There is no other documentation. So when you're promising ESOPs, either do it verbally, which means there is nothing recorded, or you create a sheet, which could be a simple enough sheet that says, look, the company has decided to allot you shares on this cliff period, this vesting period, and get both people to sign off. It could just be a single sheet of paper. But agar muh khol ke, if you go tell that guy, ki, I'm going to give you 500 shares, and you send out an email to that guy could take you to court. And that's what's happening right now with one of the companies that I'm kind of guiding right now. Once you have decided to give ESOPs, remember that this is like a really long-term relationship that you are getting into that guy. Now, if the guy were to leave at the end of the second year, this first example, all that, jhagda ho gaya, or whatever is the thing, or the guy is not turning out to be the hotshot that you thought that he would be, then all that you have suffered is 30 shares. He's not got 170 shares more. Right. So this is a way to limit the damage and also to make sure that the person, he sees higher and higher rewards as he or she is sticking back in the company for a longer period. This is just a tactical suggestion that I would give to you guys, saying that, look, this is how you implement ESOPs when you go forward. Okay. So now this is the encashing of the ESOPs part, right? This is just some terms. By the way, I'll share this deck with you guys. I'll put it out on the Apna group so that anyone can refer to this at any point in time, right? Vesting period is the time over which shares are available for purchase by the employee. So for example, in this case, the vesting period is from year 2 to year 4 at these particular things. So anytime during year 2, the guy can buy these 30 shares. Anytime during year 3, the guy can buy these 60 shares. Anytime during year 4, he is, let's put it this way, he is allotted these, but only when he buys it at whatever that notional value is, does he or she get the allotment of the shares done in his name, right? And the cliff period is the waiting period before the vesting period. This is something which is also there, right? Sometimes what happens is you can define what's called an exercise period. You can say, champ, I'm giving you 30 shares, at the end of this, by the end of the second year. Let's assume that it's at the end of the second year, but I'll give you an exercise period of a year more, which means any time between the end of the second year and the end of the third year, you can buy these shares. It doesn't necessarily mean that I've allotted it to you today. Tomorrow you have to pull out the money and give it to the company to buy these shares. So you're giving him an exercise period during which you can do that. The other thing to remember is this thing called a lock-in period, during which the employee cannot sell the shares. More often than not, you'll say that after the final vesting is over, the shares are locked in for another 2 years or something like that. Is it clear? But the point to remember is this, right? It is that ESOPs, like we talked about, like I said, it's a method by which you are trying to retain people for a much longer period. One is by allotting ESOPs. The second is to make sure that the guys are locked in, saying that they cannot sell the ESOPs. Let's assume that at the end of the fourth year, the guy just turns around and says, hey, you know what? I want to exit. And there is no lock-in. He finds somebody from somewhere else. Okay. And he says that, you know what? I'm in this absolutely amazing company, and I have so many shares, and the value of these shares are so much. Whoever you are, why don't you buy these shares from me instead of going back to the founder? So there is an entire shareholders agreement that the founders and the ESOP allottee sign. For example, it will include right of first refusal that says that the founders have the right of first refusal to say that, look, if I refuse to buy these shares back from you, then you can offer it to other people who's allowed a bunch, those kind of things. The point is this, right? It is that ESOP plans can change from company to company. Okay, sometimes the ESOP pool, which is created as a trust fund, okay, can buy the ESOPs back to give the employee an exit. But more often than not, what happens is only when a company goes IPO or when a company is acquired can an employee sell ESOPs. This is a point to remember. Questions?
I was actually about to ask this only. So long story short, given the current Indian startup concept is, it's all flashy and all that thing, but at the end of the day, it's a notional value only, right, for employee.
Absolutely.
Because more or less, so you are basically you're putting him in a trap. So unless I am not sellable, there's nothing you can get out of it. I'm just trying to see from employee perspective also, right?
You can, but at the same time, if you have created a trust fund which says that the trust fund manages the ESOP pool, the trust fund is free to buy those shares back from the employee based upon the earnings per share of the company.
Yeah. So that is only if the founder decide to do it, because if I have a positive cash and if I have a lot of money and I want to gain more control of the company, then only I will.
Correct. Yeah. But either way, even if you do it, look at it like this. If your company is making losses, your shares are going to be priced below par.
Yep.
So why is he going to sell it? He can't sell it anyway. Yep. If your company is making profits, okay, and if your company is doing well, there is a certain amount of free cash which is available within the company. Use that to buy the shares back, and if you want to give employees an exit that way, that's the kind of thing.
How do you value that? That is one of the things which is confounding us in a way, because ESOPs, as you say, that it is very interesting if you are eventually selling off the company. But if you offer a share just for the share's sake, most of the employees will say that you are a founder who doesn't seem like somebody who's going to sell it, and you are a long-term player kind of player. So my notional value remains notional value in that case. So the valuation of the company, would you be buying the share at the valuation of the company, or would it be something else kind of situation?
Correct, at the valuation of a company. At the valuation of a company.
So every year there would be a costing which would be there, that you will value the company, and the value of the company will not be based on the market situation, but it will be based on more of a balance sheet kind of situation.
Correct, based upon EPS. Okay, on your earnings per share. Now, typically there is but
no multiple of EPS kind of thing, or is it a pure?
No, sometimes you can go ahead and apply a multiple also. You can say that my industry multiple is say 6. Okay, and therefore my EPS is 10. Therefore, my value of each share is say 60.
So who decides that? The founder promoter, 75% of the holding of the company decides that on a board, or does it come from a CA kind of situation where they are estimating this?
The CA and the CS are the two people who will help you estimate this. Okay. A founder cannot decide saying that my shares are worth 100,000 rupees each.
Right. So when you are giving the ESOP, and you say that on the face value, I'm giving the ESOP at 10 rupees. But if the company is valued, most of the company who are giving ESOPs might be doing after 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Correct.
And you have some value around there. So would it be given at a face value, or would it be given at the valuation value?
No, you have an agreement to give it to your employee at a fixed price over a period of time. Let's assume that you're giving it at the end of the 3rd year. Okay, where your company now has a value beyond the 10 rupee face value per share. Let's assume it is 20 rupees per share. Is the what do you call it? Is the new value of the thing, right? And you expect the share price to go to say 50 rupees at the end of 3 years. You are still giving it to this guy at that 20 rupees value. You're saying, boss, today the share is priced at 20, but I'm getting into an agreement with you by which you can buy these shares at 20 rupees for the next 3 years. And at the end of 3 years or whatever, the shares will be priced at 50, but even then you will still be able to buy it at 20. That's the kind of agreement that you have with the employee.
Okay, so that's why you said initially that sometimes bonuses is a much better option here, because you would just give them a profit sharing option rather than going for a ESOP option. In a lot of cases, you're making a profit. But for enticing employees for a longer period of time, and giving them a bigger, better exit after say 3 years down the line, this ESOP which you are putting, the value, the buying might be on a higher side if you are a profitable company. Even if you are giving a 1% ESOP to the customers, then the money is quite high for a what I would call even a mid management or a higher management level to come into the picture and take it off from your hand. So in that case, can you discount the shares and then do the valuation later and sell the shares at a different level, or is it like whatever the valuation is, that is the valuation which the employee will always have to buy?
Ideally, it will be at the final price, which the CA and the CS decide based upon your industry multiple, and your CA and CS will know how to price
what my question is, whatever the price has been decided, that will be a buy and sell price. It cannot be that buy can be discounted and sell can be at the valuation price. Is that is not possible? So yeah, okay, got it. All right, no worries.
No, 1 second. I didn't understand. You're saying that your buy price, an employee buy price.
Suppose I am giving an ESOP and the ESOP costs 5 lakh rupees. Okay, right now. Okay. What in terms of my value of the company and stuff like that, whatever valuation I'm doing, most of the employees will be hesitant to put that 5 lakh rupees in a private limited company.
Correct.
Because they don't have surety. Because you said yourself, like I'm doing it on authorized capital. Tomorrow, I myself decide that okay, I'm going to take in more 1 lakh rupees share. That value dilutes immediately.
Correct.
So that 5 lakh rupees becomes very important. So can I give that 5 lakh rupees share to the employee as say 50,000 rupees today, but the value is actually 5 lakh rupees. So tomorrow, after 1 year down the line, that value becomes 10 lakh rupees. So 50,000 becomes 10 lakh rupees for him, kind of thing. He will pay the capital gain and stuff like that. But so my question is, if share is valued at X price, can it be discounted and given to the employees at say 10% of the X price? While buying can always,
you can, but the employee is going to pay a phenomenal capital gains tax.
Right. That is
as long as he understands that, as long as he or she understands that, that's fine.
Yeah, money in hand they can always pay. Money something upfront is something which is a bit of a tax.
So that's okay.
That's justifiable in the overall situation, kind of way.
That's
like
possible.
There's no CS kind of thing coming into the picture.
Not really needed, but I would still suggest that you get the advice of a CA or CS whenever you're pricing it.
Right. Okay. Right. Sorry for taking too much time.
No problem, man. Let's move on. Okay. A few things like this, right? Which is, the rules behind ESOPs. First thing is, the Companies Act 2013 defines, the rules behind ESOPs. And if you go to the ROC website, there's a lot of stuff that's given over there that says, ये वाला form भरना है, stamp duty क्या है, all that kind of stuff is something which is there, right? Minimum share face value, as I said, is 10 rupees. In the USA, depending upon state laws, can be, this is the advantage of having a US registered company. You can even have a share that's priced at 0.1 cents, which means, let's assume that your authorized capital or your paid up capital is say $10,000. If you divide that by 0.1 cents, you can imagine the number of shares. So you can basically create a humongous share pool. I'll give you an example, right? Which is, one of the companies that I was kind of advising, and I was offered equity shares, not ESOP shares. This is an American company where they gave me a ESOP offering, and this is interesting, right? They said, we will give you 50,000 shares in the company. My eyes lit up. I said, boss, this is bloody good. Okay, and then when I read the small print, I saw that each share was priced at 0.01 cents. Okay. So basically they were giving me $500 worth of shares, which is meaningless. But still, the fact is this: when you look at 50,000 shares, your eyes light up as compared to, if you are giving somebody 10 shares versus 10,000 shares, the 10,000 shares sounds a lot better, right? So that's the psychology behind this. So the US guys have cracked this thing. I don't think the Europeans have the same kind of a system, but the US has cracked this system. This is just a little bit of interesting stuff that we are talking about over here, right? Now, let's assume that you have to increase the number of shares in your pool. Okay, there is a method by which you can do that. Okay. And I'm going on exactly this basis, right? Which is that, as an employee, what would you like to have? Would you like to have 10 shares or 10,000 shares? Whatever is the kind of thing that you, whether it's priced at 1 rupee, 10 rupees, 15 rupees, whatever is the kind of stuff that you're talking about, right? One is to increase the paid up capital of the company from 100,000 rupees to 1 lakh, right? So in which case you'll have to pay the filing fees with the ROC, which is a percentage of, what is your increase thing. And there is a stamp duty on the shares that is there. I don't remember what the stamp duty is, but I think stamp duty is typically, 0.1% of the total value of the shares that you are issuing out, new shares that you're issuing. Okay, that is one. The second option is to capitalize the reserves of the company. Okay, and by this, let me just walk you through something like this, right? Okay, again, I'm getting in a little bit into balance sheet kind of things over there, which I hope you guys are aware of. Okay, but if you look at your balance sheet, okay, on one side it will say authorized and paid up capital, or authorized capital or paid up capital, and the second one that it will say over there is, it will say, what is the reserves. Especially if your company has been profitable for the long run, many a times what will happen is your CA will transfer some of those profits back into the reserves of the company, or saying that this is what the company's asset value looks like. The company is worth so much more because of the reserves. One easy way to increase the number of shares is just by saying, look, there are two ways in which you can look at this. Having a higher reserves and surplus with a smaller number of shares essentially increases the price earnings of the company. Is that clear? Take a minute. I'm going to try and do something. Hold on. I'm just going to open up a new slide and just give you this one. Okay. Let's assume. Okay, I'm going to be doing some typing right now. Okay. Let's assume that you're paid up equals, say, 100,000 rupees. Okay, total number of shares is 10,000. Okay, your reserves is, say, for example, at some point in time or the other has become, say, 500,000 rupees. Okay, so now your price earnings, when you look at it, is actually this 100,000 plus this 500. This is all rupees. Okay, rupees, and this is numbers, which will be 100,000 plus 500,000 divided by total number of shares, which is, how much is it? 60 rupees per share. Is this clear?
Yes.
But now this is, now you are allotting shares, or now you have sitting on shares which have a higher value. Let's assume that you now turn around and say, ye matlab bhool jao. My paid up capital is this, total shares is this, reserves is this. Okay. What you are now going to do is you're going to say capitalize. Which means effectively you are issuing 50,000 new shares. Owned in proportion. So let's assume this paid up capital was, say, two founders who held, say, 50% each. Correct? So this 50,000 shares will now be held in proportion, which essentially means 25,000. Is this clear? Clear? Not clear?
Clear.
Okay. So now what has happened to the reserves? Ab kya hai?
0.
Okay. What's the total number of shares? This is what you now have. So now when you want to allot shares, you can now go ahead. Let me go back to that slide that we were talking about, right? Which is, yeah, capitalize. Okay. You convert the entire reserves and surplus into an additional 150,000 shares with a face value of 10 rupees each. Increases the total number of shares to 160,000. It just gives you more shares to play around with. Rather than say, okay, look, out of these 10,000 shares that I have over here, I'm giving 200 shares, 300 shares, or whatever, at 60 rupees each, whatever the value that we calculated at that point in time, right? You could still turn around and say, look, I'm giving you 1,000 shares, but at 10 rupees each. That is the kind of thing that you can do with this number jugglery. Any questions? Okay. So there is, I think, in LinkedIn, there was one guy who asked a question saying that does it make sense to, do this, the ESOP pool for a non-profit? What do you guys think? क्या हुआ भाई?
Non-profit को तो I don't know उसका valuation कैसे करेंगे?
Exactly. So the point is this, right? Which is that ESOPs typically make sense for a company which is a for-profit company.
Yeah.
For a non-profit or for an NGO or something like that, it doesn't make sense. But there is another way to look at it. For example, one of the things that you can do is, let's assume that the company is never going to be sold, but you can still declare dividends based upon the number of shares that you own. Correct. Let's assume that there is a company that is doing 1 crore in PAT, profit after taxes. It says, boss, I'm declaring a 50% dividend. मान लो. Okay, that dividend only goes to shareholders. So which means 50 lakhs will be distributed to shareholders in the proportion of the equity that they hold. So that's another route. So even if it's a not-for-profit, where the money has to go back into the operations of the company or into the existing people who are running the company, it could be done as dividends. So ESOPs in that limited sense makes some kind of a sense over there, but it is only for dividends. And finally, if it's a not-for-profit, it's never going to be sold. I mean, someone might acquire it, but the value of the company is not going to be huge. That's a point that I wanted to make. Okay. Any other questions?
No, I think, sir, it was very helpful. At least we got some understanding. I just have one small question. I think we can talk about this later on also. How come ESOPs are different than equity transfer? Because under the equity also is number of shares, right? At a very high level.
Correct. So yeah, I noticed that you had asked this question because equity transfers are, ESOPs are what's called a restricted pool, and it can only be given to employees. It's more by definition rather than anything else. Okay. Now you can have, under equity, you can have different kinds of shares. For example, there are some which are called preference shares. Okay. There is something which is called common shares or common stock, and there is something which is called preferential shares. Preferential shares get differential treatment as compared to common stock, common shares. Well, it is for want of a better word, it's like a higher caste, equivalent of shares. Okay. So, for example, someone who holds preference shares could be given the ability to sell them first before common stock is sold out. Or a preference share could say that, look, I get a slightly higher dividend as compared to common stock.
Okay.
Okay. ESOPs are normally common stock. So someone who, and when you allot shares out from the overall equity pool of the company, you can allot it either as preference shares, or you can allot it as, you can create a pool that says preference shares itne hai, common stock is so much, the founders hold so much of preference shares and common stock, employees only hold so much in common stock. To an advisor who's coming in, I'm going to give so much in terms of preference shares and so much in terms of common stock, whatever is the kind of thing that you wanted to do. But advisors, mentors, whoever is coming in from outside who you want to guide, typically you do not give them ESOPs unless they are on your rolls as a employee. That's the way in which it's treated. Did I answer your question?
Yep.
Cool. Who else? Anybody else?
But I might reach out to you, sir, for a specific scenario I have later, one-to-one.
Anytime, boss.
Yep,
You have my
sure.
email. I'm going to
Yep.
share this on
No,
the
we all
YouTube
have your number also.
Sorry?
We all have your number also. Not only email, we will call you. Just bugging you, sir. Just bugging you, sir.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll share this on the अपना group.
Sure.
फिर उसके बाद देखते हैं. Let's see what comes up from there.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, Anup, thanks a ton, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Anup.
Thank you, Guhesh, for the session.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I hope this was useful for you guys.
Yes,
Yes.
it was.
For starters, at least got some idea, got a lot of idea, to be honest, to start with.
Okay. Chalo.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Anup,
Yeah.
after you just share the video link so that then I could put it up for other people also.
Okay, sure. Okay, sure.
Thanks.
I'll share it as soon as it is available.
Done. Yeah. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.